He was still inside her when I walked into the room. My father. My blood. The man who had sworn on my mother's deathbed to protect everything she had left behind. And there he was, sprawled over her, his new wife, Kendra, moaning into the same silk sheets my mother had died upon, still stained with lavender oil and hospital morphine. I was not supposed to be home that night. But something had pulled me, something spiritual, almost maternal. I had driven 6 hours in the dark just to lay in my mother's bed and smell what was left of her. Instead, I walked into my inheritance being defiled, by my father and a girl who used to copy my homework in sophomore year. I froze. My heart banged so loud against my ribs I thought it might shatter bone. Kendra's legs were tangled, exposed. My father's grunts were unrecognizable. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply stood there, watching the betrayal unfold, until he looked up, and our eyes met. That moment changed everything. Folded hands, medium skin tone. Thank you so much to every single one of you watching. To all our new and returning viewers, I appreciate you deeply. If you have not yet subscribed, I cannot wait for you to hit that button. It is the fuel that powers this channel and helps us keep bringing you real, raw, unforgettable stories. Please engage below in the comments, share your thoughts, reactions, and what you would have done if you were me in that moment. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Hannah L. Spencer. I am 32 years old. Born and raised in a quiet suburb in North Carolina. My mother, Diane Spencer, was my hero, a woman of class, silence, and iron strength. My father, Richard Spencer, was a respected real estate broker, once adored in the community. Tall, commanding, with salt and pepper hair that made women blush at PTA meetings. And Kendra Blake, well, she used to sit behind me in honors English. Now she sleeps in my mother's bed and signs my family checks. I am here to tell you what happened when my mother died, and how I discovered the truth about the man I called my father. The day my mother died, the world did not stop. The sky was clear. Birds chirped as if nothing sacred had been stolen. I remember holding her hand in the hospice, her fingers cold and knotted. She whispered, "Protect what is mine." That was all. No long farewell. No dramatic monologue. Just a plea. 2 weeks later, her body was in the ground, and my father had already cleared her closet. By the end of the month, he had painted her bedroom beige. By the 3rd month, Kendra had moved in. I first suspected something when I found a single bobby pin under the bathroom rug. My mother never used bobby pins. I left it there. The next week, a red thong hung behind the laundry door. That was not hers either. Then came the loud laughter down the hallway at night. My father said it was business calls. But there was no laptop, no notes, just low moans muffled by the guest bedroom door. When I saw Kendra at the grocery store wearing my mother's vintage green coat, I knew something was wrong. She winked at me. Winked. Like we shared a secret. Like she had one. The final blow came during the reading of the will. My mother had worked for years building a skincare brand, clean, herbal-based, all from our backyard garden. She built it with her own 2 hands while raising me. Her lawyer, Mr. Aldridge, read the terms with a shaky voice. She had left everything, to Richard. The company. The house. The garden. And me? Just a small savings account. Barely enough for rent in Charlotte. Impossible, I said. She promised. But the papers were signed. Witnessed. Dated. Kendra sat beside my father during the reading, rubbing his back like a trained dog. I stared at her perfectly polished nails, remembering how she used to bite them raw before tests. I began digging. Not out of greed, but out of grief. I found my mother's old journal under a loose floorboard in the sewing room. Pages smeared with oils and time, but legible. That is when I learned the first secret. My mother knew. She wrote about the affair. About Kendra. About how she caught them once in the backyard, near the hydrangeas. How she said nothing because she wanted me to have a father. But what broke me was her final entry. If he steals my legacy, may my daughter become the woman I never had the strength to be. Which brings us back to the bedroom. To the night I saw them. To the night I walked in and watched him ruin everything sacred. My father did not flinch. He simply climbed off her like a man who had been caught stealing cookies, not dignity. "Get out," he said. To me. I left. But not for good. That night, I made a promise. I would become my mother's daughter, not the quiet one who bore it all in silence. No. I would fight. I would claw. I would uncover every lie, every forged paper, every secret buried in that damn beige-painted house. And before I left, I would make my father realize the woman he underestimated had been reborn in me. This was no longer about revenge. This was war. I had always believed I knew my home. Every hallway. Every chipped tile in the kitchen. Every creaking stair that groaned when the house breathed. But after that night, after watching my father lay with the woman who used to giggle behind me in high school, I realized something unbearable. The other woman had always been in our house. I had simply been too blind to see it. As a child, I remembered how my mother used to go silent whenever Kendra came up in conversation. Kendra had been a frequent guest back then. She would come over after school under the pretense of studying, but she never studied. She would giggle with my father at the dining table while my mother cooked dinner alone. I used to think it was harmless. Just her charm, her innocence, her way of trying to fit in. Now, every laugh, every twirl of her hair, every time she stayed just a little longer, burned in my memory like acid. It was never innocence. It was grooming. And my father? He had always made sure I never noticed. I did not scream. I did not curse. I became silent. Focused. I moved out of the guest house that same week and rented a tiny, cold one-bedroom apartment 30 minutes from town. There was a leak in the bathroom ceiling and a rusty smell in the water, but I did not care. It gave me space to think. I began requesting old financial records. I used the Freedom of Information Act to request property filings. I visited the county clerk's office 3 days a week. I even began talking to some of my mother's old friends, people she used to do Sunday brunch with before her illness took hold. Piece by piece, a trail began to form. A sick trail. One that suggested the company, my mother's company, had been slowly shifted into a different name 2 years before she died. Kendra's name. The business license had been legally transferred by Diane Spencer, months before her health began deteriorating. But the signature on the transfer? I knew my mother's handwriting. That was not it. I decided to confront him. He was having wine on the back patio, where my mother used to sit with her gardening books. Kendra was not home. I walked through the gate like I belonged, because I did. That house was built with my mother's hands. And her pain. He looked up at me, startled, but too proud to speak first. I sat down, sliding a photocopy of the business transfer across the table. "This is a forged signature." He laughed quietly. That awful, smug laugh. Like he still believed I was 12 years old and clueless. "You should not dig into things you do not understand, Hannah," he said, sipping. I leaned forward. "I understand enough to know you robbed a dying woman." His jaw clenched. There was no apology. No shame. Just silence. "Did you love her?" I asked. He blinked slowly. "Love is complicated." I stood up. "No. You made it complicated. But I am about to make it very simple." It was a rainy Thursday when I saw him again. Noah Blackwell. The boy I had loved during my second year of college, the one who left without a goodbye when his mother fell ill. The one who kissed me under the campus bell tower and whispered that I tasted like July. He was different now. Sharper. More composed. He wore a navy blue suit that fit too perfectly and carried a leather briefcase filled with law. I had gone to my mother's old attorney, desperate for someone to trust. But the receptionist told me Mr. Aldrich had retired and left the firm in his protégé's hands. And there he was. Noah. He recognized me immediately. His eyes widened. I watched his mouth form the word Hannah like it hurt to say it out loud. I sat down. My voice did not shake. I need your help proving my mother's estate was stolen. And if I have to burn every inch of that house to get justice, I will. Noah and I worked late nights. Sometimes until 2 in the morning. Our research was not just legal, it was personal. He pulled records from court archives, traced financial transfers, examined emails from the company's server, and cross-referenced dates with the timeline of my mother's health decline. One night, he found something that made both of us go quiet. "Look at this," he said, turning his laptop toward me. It was a scanned letter from my mother to the bank, dated 8 months before she died, requesting a hold on her accounts until further notice. But the next page? It was another letter, same date, same signature, requesting full access be given to a new co-signer. Kendra Blake. They used her illness, I whispered. They knew she was not coherent. They used her weakness, Noah replied. And the courts will eat that up. We had enough to open a case. But what I did not expect was what came next. The footage was grainy. It came from an old nanny cam my mother had hidden in her sewing room years ago. She had always said the maid was stealing lotion samples. I had forgotten all about it. But when I was digging through the attic for any old files, I found the SD card buried under spools of lavender thread. What it captured was not theft. It was betrayal. There she was. Kendra. Leaning over my mother, who was barely conscious in her hospice recliner. "Just sign here, Miss Diane. It is for your nurse coverage." My mother looked dazed. Confused. She nodded and scribbled something onto a clipboard. The date? The same day the estate was transferred. My knees buckled. Noah caught me before I hit the ground. "She drugged her," I said. He nodded slowly. "We have her. We filed a civil case that same week. Fraud. Forgery. Elder abuse. Estate tampering." And just as we prepared our motion, a twist came I never could have expected. Kendra's name was not just on the estate. It was on the deed to the house. The same house my mother grew up in. The one she inherited from her grandmother. The one she made my father swear to never sell. Kendra had it listed on the market. Ready for a silent auction. As if it were hers to give away. I drove back to the house in the dead of night. I walked through every room like a ghost. The garden was overgrown. My mother's rosebushes strangled by weeds. Her studio now a gym with cheap purple mats and influencer ring lights. I stood in the center of the living room and whispered, "I will take it back. Every single piece." Noah and I grew close again, closer than I ever expected. There was something about fighting for something pure that made us feel safe with each other. One evening, as the case papers sat scattered across his desk, we kissed again. It was not gentle. It was not poetic. It was desperate. Like we both needed to feel something real after living in a web of lies. I pulled away first. "I cannot fall into this," I said. He brushed hair from my face. "You already have." 2 months after the night I caught them in the bed, a court date was set. Depositions began. My father's face changed in every session, first smug, then stiff, then silent. Kendra tried to play innocent. But the footage? The forged papers? Her sweet girl act crumbled. But the biggest twist had not yet come. Something Noah discovered late one night, tucked inside a sealed envelope marked confidential, Diane Spencer Estate. A DNA report. And a name. My half-brother. Not my father's son. But someone else's. Someone very close. Someone I would confront in Chapter 3. There is something inside a woman that changes when she chooses to stop grieving and starts fighting. It does not come in a scream. It comes in a whisper. In a slow tightening of the gut. In the way she starts looking at everyone like a suspect. I stopped mourning the day I realized my mother never intended to leave me behind. She left a weapon inside me. I was her daughter. And now, I was about to make everyone realize it. The envelope was beige and unassuming, until I opened it. The paternity test inside was dated 7 years prior. My mother had requested it herself, back when I was away at college. Noah found it while combing through sealed evidence tied to the estate records. It was a report on Kendra's son. The boy she had given birth to shortly after my mother's last major chemo round. My father had claimed him openly and proudly, like some kind of rebirth of youth, a second chance at legacy. But the paper in my hand said otherwise. Probability of paternity, 0%. My father was not the boy's biological father. But the listed DNA match? It was my mother's brother. My uncle. I felt sick. I wanted to vomit right there in Noah's office. The walls spun. I saw flashes. Kendra smiling at Thanksgiving, Kendra holding my cousin's baby, Kendra talking to my uncle in the corner of the living room during my mother's funeral. It had never been about love. It was always about leverage. She had slept with both, my father and my uncle, and used my mother's sickness to steal everything she could. I closed the file and held it to my chest. She was not just a mistress, I whispered. She was a saboteur. I requested a private meeting with my father. I wanted him to hear it from me before it reached the courtroom. He agreed to meet at the house, our house. The one now stripped of its soul and filled with stainless steel and monochrome lies. He waited in the kitchen, where my mother used to cook her famous honey cornbread. I laid the paper on the marble countertop. He did not touch it. I trusted you to protect her, I said. And you slept with her enemy. His jaw flexed. She was a child when she came here. No. She was a predator. You made her powerful. He said nothing. He looked tired. Old. Smaller than I remembered. She slept with your brother-in-law, I continued. She had his child and passed it off as yours. And you were too proud to question it. His hands began to shake. I almost pitied him. Almost. The courthouse was full that day. Small-town scandals always draw crowds. My lawyer, Noah, laid out the case like an executioner sharpening his blade. One by one, the evidence was presented, the forged documents, the video footage of a dying woman being manipulated, the transfer of estate assets while under the influence of heavy medication. And then, the DNA test. Kendra burst into tears on the stand. Claimed she was young. Claimed she was lost. Claimed she loved my father. But her crocodile tears dried up the moment the paternity report was submitted into public record. Gasps filled the courtroom. I watched my father lower his head into his hands. The shame was finally heavier than his arrogance. The court ruled in my favor. All estate assets were returned to the rightful heir, me. Kendra was ordered to vacate the property within 30 days. The skincare business was restored under my name. I returned to the house 2 weeks later. Alone. The silence inside was different now. Not hollow. Not haunted. But waiting. I stood in my mother's old studio. The one filled with dried flowers and aged herbs. I touched the windowsill where she used to rest her coffee mug every morning. I did it, Mama, I whispered. I felt the wind shift through the open pane, as if she answered me back. I found my father sitting in the garden a week later. He had aged in months. The proud lines of his face now sagged like melted wax. I do not expect forgiveness, he said quietly. Good, I replied. Because this is not about forgiveness. He nodded. I sat beside him anyway. I just want you to understand, I continued, that I am no longer the little girl who needed you to notice her. I am my mother's daughter. And she did not raise a coward. He looked up at me. I know, he whispered. She raised a storm. I did not keep the house. I turned it into a sanctuary, a women's shelter and rehabilitation center named Diane's Haven. Every wall repainted. Every garden replanted. I launched a new product line under the skincare brand, using my mother's formulas and my own designs. It sold out in the first week. Noah and I took things slow. Some nights we talked about the past. Some nights we did not talk at all. We just breathed in the comfort of healing. One day, as we stood on the old porch overlooking the rebuilt garden, he took my hand. You scare me sometimes, he said with a smile. Why? I asked. Because you remind me of her. And she was the strongest woman I ever met. I smiled back. Then you better hold on. Because I am just getting started. I did not just reclaim my mother's legacy. I avenged it. I made my father realize that the quiet, obedient daughter he buried beneath years of betrayal had bloomed into something fierce. A protector. A fighter. A legacy in motion. And now, I walk in her shoes, not because I miss her, but because I am her. And no man, father, lover, or liar, will ever silence me again.